Sorry about that. I'm pretty sure yesterday that you heard about that hour and 17 press conference that Donald Trump gave. And in my opinion, that press conference was an embarrassment, not just for Donald Trump, but for America. Now, there are going to be a group of people out there that are going to cheer and applaud and find pride in that press conference. And I've gone in and I've seen a lot of comments about how happy, some people are about what went down in that press conference. Now, on the other side, there were a lot of people that found embarrassment, shame, not just for the office of the presidency, but for America, because people around the world were able to and are able to view that press conference, which was, again, an embarrassment. Now, the Democrats, for some reason, were able to view that press conference with their busy schedules and had no problems commenting on what went down. Republicans, on the other hand, for the most part, feigned ignorance, i.e., they claimed that they hadn't seen it or heard about it. That was yesterday. Obviously, everybody knows about it today. But there were one or two Republicans that were jumping for joy about how Donald Trump handled the press conference. Now, I am of the camp that was embarrassed and is embarrassed. If you didn't see it, let me save you a little time. Basically, throughout the entire press conference, which initially was called to name the new nominee for the Department of Labor, Mr. Trump does or did what he always does. He attacked the press unmercifully. He also lied. He lied left, right, up, and down, and then when absolutely caught in a lie by one of the NBC news people, he quickly pivoted away from the subject. Now, this is basically what Trump said yesterday. Number one, he said he inherited a mess from President Obama. Well, in my opinion, if he thinks that he inherited a mess, I wonder what he would call the condition of the country in January of 2009, with the country hemorrhaging 800,000 jobs a month, the stock market down somewhere around 7,900, 8,000, unemployment levels in the vicinity of 9.5, various manufacturing companies, and in particular the car industry, getting ready to tank. I think that was, in my opinion, a mess of epic proportions. Mr. Trump has inherited an economy that, although not going gangbusters, but he's inherited an economy with 74 months. I believe it's 74. No, it's probably longer than that. But anyway, he's inherited an economy that has created jobs for a record number of months. He inherited a stock market that was in the vicinity of 19,000. Today, the stock market is above 20. He's inherited record low unemployment levels. Now, there's an argument about that as far as what the actual level is, because people want to talk about the actual number of people who are employed versus unemployed, and those that are unemployed and not looking are not counted in numbers. It's, you know, it's called the participation rate, okay? And that is probably higher than the, I believe was about 4.8, 4.7, 4.8 the last time I looked. The labor participation rate is probably higher, probably 7, 8, somewhere in that vicinity. And remember, a lot of people are working multiple jobs where before, you know, people were pretty much working one job doing their 40 hours. But, yeah, I digress. The economy that Mr. Trump inherited is like night and day from the economy that Barack Obama inherited. So if this is a mess, Barack Obama inherited hell and should be considered the second coming for all of the improvements that the economy has undergone under his administration. But I digress. Internationally, the world situation is a whole lot more stable today than it was 8 years ago. Now, that's not saying that everything is peaches and cream. You know, you got the problem with ISIS. You got a big problem with the Russia, and their incursion and annexation of Crimea, which, by the way, they have recently said they have no intention of giving back, and we're going to have to deal with that. Barack Obama inherited a very poor opinion of America, and he has, in fact, improved the image of America over his 8 years. And that improvement looks like it's getting ready to go in the toilet, because Mr. Trump has talked to various foreign leaders, and very few of them, I would say, have a positive opinion of him based on his conversations with them. Now, Mr. Trump has not accomplished anything, actually. He claims that he's accomplished more in his short period of time in office than a lot of other presidents over the same period and even over their entire terms. That's a quote from Mr. Stephen Miller. And that damn sure is not true. Mr. Trump has signed a lot of executive orders. I think the last count was 8, and a lot of executive memorandums. I believe the last count there was like 11 or 12. But all of those executive orders and memorandums have accomplished pretty much jack shit. The only EO of any consequence that had any type of a major effect was the ban on travel from the 7 Muslim countries, and that was a Muslim ban. And that got slapped down by the judiciary, who he's also fighting with. And to tell you that he realized that he lost, because Donald Trump never loses. He fights and fights and fights. Within the last 48 hours, Mr. Trump has gone back to the 9th District, where the case is going to be heard, and asked them to rescind their decision on the order. Not so that the ban can be reinstated through the order, but so that they can retract the order. They can't retract it while the order is under judiciary review and suit. So he basically lost. Now, he's asked them to retract it so that he can pull this and, in effect, negate the 2 decisions that were made against it, and then reissue an executive order that he believes and his people believe are going to be able to pass judiciary muster. They are drafting this and using the procedures in the right way. And I have no doubt that on the second blush, he's going to be able to get done what he attempted to do with that initial executive order. But among the other things that he claims that he's accomplished, which in my opinion is basically nothing, he's ordered his generals, obviously, to come up with a plan to defeat ISIS. Now, all throughout his campaign, Mr. Trump stated that he had a plan to defeat ISIS and to defeat them quickly. So now that he's asking his generals to come up with a plan, my question is, was he lying about having a plan? In my opinion, the answer is obvious. He was sitting there blowing smoke up our asses and telling us it was sunshine. And 46% of the people believed him because they voted for him. Now, he's also ordered the Pentagon to provide him with plans on rebuilding the military. Now, I do not believe that our military is in piss poor shape and is decimated and all the other BS lines that you hear, because we spend more on our military than the next 8 countries combined. So if our military is in piss poor shape, somebody needs to go to jail, because the fraud would be more than rampant. It would be astronomical. So again, in my opinion, he just wants to get into another arms race. But the tragic part about it is he wants to get into an arms race with himself. And what does he say after he talks about rebuilding the military? He wants to rebuild the military so that he will never have to use it. Well, to me, if you're going to pour money into something that you're never going to utilize, I think that's a waste of money, just plain and simple. Now, he wants to give us our strong borders because that's what the people want. And his claim there is that he's just keeping an election promise. Okay, no, I'll go along with that. But then he keeps coming back to the massive, in his words, win in the Electoral College. His win, he claims, was greater than anybody else since Ronald Reagan. Well, he got busted in a news conference by an MSNBC host who Googled the numbers on the spot. His electoral win of 306 was less than Obama's last one, which was in the 400 electoral vote range as far as total votes received. Obama's first win was, I believe, Obama had 356. So when he was pushed on that, he said, well, it was the greatest electoral college win as far as a Republican is concerned. So then they pulled the numbers out on him on Bush's win. And Bush had like 350, 360 when he won. So then he said, well, that was the information that I was given. That's what I was told. And he quickly pivoted away from it. Well, Donald, you got a cell phone that you use all the time for Twitter. You could have Googled that information just to confirm it for yourself. So what you're basically saying is, if your people tell you something, you don't even check. So obviously this was not a historic win. Now, was he lying about that, or was he just misinformed? Well, he's been sprouting that same garbage since the day he won the election. And he's had plenty of time to check. So I'm gonna call that purposely lying about the whole thing, especially when he's been called on it multiple times in the past. He should have at least checked. All right. Just so that you know, Donald Trump is going to have another couple of rallies in South Carolina. I believe that's today, and Florida, Melbourne, Florida on Saturday. Look, folks, Donald Trump is an egotistical maniac with several mental disorders. That's just it in a nutshell. Everything is always about him. Whenever he's asked a question, some way, shape, manner, or form, he has to relate it back to himself personally. He tends to describe things using hyperbole. Everything that he does is the greatest, and anything that anybody else does or says that is in opposition to his point of view are the worst, total garbage. Okay, Mr. Trump made a statement when asked about his administration that it was running like a fine oiled and tuned machine. That could not be further from the truth. Mr. Trump just lost his nominee for Secretary of Labor, who bailed out. The person that, well, let me back up. He just lost his National Security Advisor, Michael Flynn. The person that he tabbed to replace Michael Flynn says he doesn't want the job. He now has a problem with the AG out of Oklahoma, who he has tabbed for the EPA director. Now, that guy may make it through, but it was just revealed that that person, and his name escapes me, has been illegally withholding documents from his communications with various oil and gas companies. Over 3,000 pages of documents. And a federal judge has just ordered that individual to provide those documents by Tuesday. Now, the Democrats are asking to stall the actual vote on the nomination until after those documents are released so they can go through toward. But more than likely, Mitch McConnell and the environmental committee that oversees that particular department are going to try to ramrod this through. So that's just another indication of his poor choices in picking people to run these departments. I'm not even going to get into Ben Carson, who doesn't know his ass from a hole in the ground as far as urban development is concerned, or Betty DeVos, who knows nothing whatsoever about public education and is in fact a supporter and an individual who has financial ties to the for-profit charter school industry that's in Michigan and Florida. I'm not even, don't want to even really get into that. But again, that's just poor choices of personnel. Now, I heard this morning that a black Republican by the name of Shermichael Singleton, who was tabbed to be an assistant to Ben Carson in the Department of Housing and Urban Development, was walked by security out of the facility, kicked to the curb as Ben Carson's assistant. Why? Because he wrote some derogatory comments about Mr. Trump during the campaign for the presidency. Now, it didn't matter that Mr. Singleton, during the initial vetting, apologized for writing the article and swore loyalty to Mr. Trump. That didn't matter. Mr. Trump cannot abide anyone who has said anything in opposition to him. Now, yeah, I know you're going to say, yeah, he picked Nikki Haley for the UN ambassador. That, in my opinion, is, that's just a FaceTime position. And she really didn't come out and write anything. She just basically was on a different candidate's bandwagon, and once she came off of that bandwagon, when that person dropped out, she basically remained silent. Where Mr. Singleton's crime was to continue to describe Mr. Trump as not holding to the values of the traditional Republican Party. So I guess that was a bridge too far. Mr. Trump has claimed that he has made several or a bunch of various things happen for the benefit of the country, and he calls them major accomplishments. Among such, he withdrew us officially from TPP. Well, that wasn't going to pass anyway, so that was basically lip service. He's expediting approvals and cutting various regulations for various business projects, pipelines and manufacturing operations, etc., to be able to come to fruition on building businesses and pipelines, etc., etc. Okay, fine. That obviously is going to be helpful, but at the same time, with the relaxing of rules and the getting rid of various rules, in my opinion, America will be less safe. There's a reason why we have all of these rules. And yes, maybe there is over-regulation, but honestly, is over-regulation not better than under-regulation and people lose their lives? That's up to you to decide. He's also announced a federal hiring freeze on non-essential employees. Well, hell, that's been in effect ever since the sequester. So for him to say he's not going to hire any non-essential people, it all depends on what your definition of essential is as far as for the service of the people. And again, that's in the eye of the beholder. He also has now instituted an executive order, I guess. I don't know if it's actual legislation. I don't believe that it is. Making any action against the police a hate crime. Yeah, right. Okay. I'm just going to keep going past that one. He's created a task force to look into reducing violent crime. Well, if you look at the numbers, the levels of violent crime are pretty much at an all-time low. They are at least at the lowest level that they've been at for the past 20 years. So I guess reducing it further is a good thing, but he acts like America is in the throes of this massive crime spree all over the country. That just is not true. Now, he calls the country drug infested, and he's got another task force out there that is going to work on getting the cartels out of the country and doing something about drugs. Well, that sounds like the war on drugs to me, and that's been an abject failure. He also is instructing various agencies to crack down on sanctuary cities and is stopping the catch and release on the border, which I thought had already been stopped. He has, excuse me, issued executive orders regarding removal of illegal residents from the country. And he specifically said gang members and drug dealers. And then he threw in and others. Well, there's a hell of a lot of and others that have been on the news recently, including mothers of small children that have been here 20 years plus, people that basically have misdemeanors on their records. He's expanded out the definition of criminal to cover everything, whereas President Obama was really concentrating on dangerous felons who had committed dangerous acts. Now, I came across an article on a woman, and it was a transgender woman. And this woman had come from Honduras, where she had committed a crime in Honduras. I think it was a forgery or something like that. Anyway, she came into the United States, and she was living with this guy, Mexican guy, legally here though. And this guy was beating the crap out of her, threatening her with bodily harm, actually performing bodily harm on her. And she had gone to court to obtain a restraining order against the guy. The guy was arrested for a felony. During his arrest, in order to curry favor, I guess, what he did was he told the police that this person was going into court to get a restraining order against him, and that the person was an undocumented alien. What do the ICE people do? The person goes into court, gets the order, and the ICE people come into court and grab the person and take that person to a deportation center. So now what you have is a lot of illegal people, illegal residents, seeing that, are going to be more than hesitant about reporting crimes because they would be exposing themselves to a deportation. That is not good. Now, obviously, one of his claims to fame is that executive order to keep radical Islamic terrorists out of the country. And he claims that the citizens are very happy about that order. But I beg to differ, given the fact that all of the marches, protests, the airport blockages, etc., don't seem to support his theory about the people being happy about that EO. Now, he has also stated, and I really would like to get more information on this, that extreme vetting is now in effect in many places. And it's working well. Well, let's see, 2 weeks, extreme vetting in place, working well. I need more detail on that one, which he did not obviously provide. He then went on to attack the 9th District Court, which I had told you about earlier, and he attacked them by stating that over 80% of the time, their rulings are overturned. And he stated that they are overturned more than any other district court in the country. Well, doing a fact check on that, I don't know about that 80%, but I do know that there are 2 other courts, I believe it's the 2nd District and I think it might have been the 6th, that have had their rulings overturned more than the 9th District. So now, did I mention that he is greased the skids so that the Keystone Pipeline and the Dakota Access Pipeline are going to resume like now? And he's claiming that thousands and thousands of jobs are going to be created because of this. And that technically is true. There will be thousands and thousands of jobs created by reinstating the ability for the pipelines to go forward. What he fails to mention is those are all temporary jobs. And after everything is completed, there will be somewhere between 35 and 50 permanent monitoring jobs that will remain. Now, one of the things he said about that pipeline is he's requiring that all those pipelines be built using American steel. And you know something? In my opinion, that's great. Helps our steel industry, etc., jobs. Great. But now my question is, all the piping is already sitting on site, and all of that piping is from overseas. So I kind of would like to know what's going to happen with that piping. Are they going to scrap it? Are they going to sell it to the U.S. steel companies for them to smelt it down and then recast it? Or more than likely, they're going to buy some U.S. steel and mix it in. Need to make sure that we follow up on that. Now, of course, he hasn't kept that promise that he made, that on the very first day of his administration, he was going to repeal Obamacare. The latest now is that they are beginning their work to repeal and replace the ACA. And that, he states, should be done by mid-March. And at that point, he will begin working on tax reform. And the reason he has to do it in that order is because of statutory requirements. He's talked about stopping job losses here and renegotiating all of our trade agreements so that we get fair trade. He's taken credit for our car manufacturers making investments, which he had nothing to do with, because those decisions are made 6 months to a year before decisions are actually announced. He's taken credit for Walmart supposedly going to create 10,000 jobs in the country. He's taken credit for Intel getting ready to build a new plant here. He's taken credit for a whole bunch of stuff that he really shouldn't be taking credit for, because these are all business decisions. And these are all business decisions that were made way in the past and are just now starting to see actualization. Mr. Trump just loves to pat himself on the back, and he did so at the very end of these statements. And just to let you know, these were all written statements that he gave before he opened himself up to questions. Oh, and I forgot, he did do a defense of Michael Flynn, stating that Michael Flynn did nothing wrong other than to lie to the vice president. Well, if that's so, and that's what caused you to fire him, ask for his resignation, or for him to offer his resignation, you accepted, you knew that damn near a month ago. So you should have fired him back then, but you just fired him a couple of days ago. And the only change that has occurred since you were initially informed that he lied to Vice President Pence is the fact that it was leaked and the public found out about it. That's the only difference. Mike Flynn is still the same Mike Flynn, had done nothing else. So the real problem or real decision should have been made more than, well, approximately a month ago, given today's date. Now, Mr. Trump claims that the problem was not Mike Flynn. The problem is not dealings with Russia. The problems are leaks. Those are the biggest problem, and that we should ignore the obvious collusion that occurred between his campaign and Russia. I say obvious collusion. Well, another leak. The FBI has stated unequivocally that personnel from the Trump campaign were in direct communications multiple times with Russian intelligence. So in my mind, if you're in communication with those guys, the next logical step is coordination. So now Mr. Trump is totally unhappy about all the leaks that are coming out of the White House and quote unquote the intelligence agencies, but he was more than happy to work with the WikiLeaks hacking of the DNC and John Podesta. More than happy to work with those leaks. So I don't know. You know, he claims that the press should be ashamed of himself. But I say he should have been ashamed of himself for keeping the vice president in the dark for 2 weeks when he should have been told immediately. So that just goes to tell me that he really doesn't have any respect for Vice President Pence. Now, I don't know about you, but his defense of Paul Manafort is ridiculous. Paul Manafort was a paid consultant for the previous president of the Ukraine, whoever may not be able to draw a direct line from Paul Manafort to Putin, but you damn sure can draw an indirect line. And documents were unearthed showing that monies were paid to Manafort, which for some reason we haven't been able to track. And those monies supposedly were funneled to the former president of the Ukraine from Russia. So there's a, if not straight, a dotted line from Russia to Manafort. And Manafort, obviously, when this information started to surface, he left the Trump campaign. Now, Trump claims that he has no property, loans, or deals in Russia. Easiest way to prove that, and Congress has the power to do it, provide the tax returns. That will clear this up once and for all, because his own son stated that tons of money, millions of dollars, were coming in from Russia. So which is it? Either money's coming in from Russia or you got nothing to do with it. The tax return should basically straighten all of that out. Now again, Mr. Trump claims that he has had no direct contact or indirect contact with anybody from Russia. He doesn't even know who to call. He claims only to have spoken to Putin twice, and both times were subsequent to him being elected. My response is that he may not have any direct contact, but if his people did, in my opinion, that's indirect contact. The situation with Russia and their involvement in our political election system is not fake news. Mr. Trump, you can't have it both ways. If the leaks are real, about real news, and the press reports on it, you cannot call their reporting of the leaked information fake news. Just doesn't happen. So you need to stop attacking the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, which you did also throughout your press conference. Honestly, Donald Trump loves the back and forth because he is a master at controlling these press conferences. He loves calling media fake and dishonest. He claims that there's never any attempt to consult him on stories that are being done. And I don't know if that, in fact, is true or not. He complains consistently about his nominees being slow-walked through the nomination process. But hell, just take a look at the nominees. Some of them have absolutely no business being in government. Now, Mr. Trump is calling on the Justice Department to look into leaks, and they probably are going to do that. But I ask you, Jeff Sessions is the new Attorney General. Is there any conflict of interest possible with Jeff Sessions being in charge? Now, Mr. Trump claims that he's just for fair media and he doesn't mind bad stories if they're true. But apparently, the stories that are out there that have been proven to be true, he has attacked them, the reporters, and the news agencies without any compunction. He's got a hard-on for CNN and claims that they hate him. And then he loves pointing out that the media has a lower approval rating in Congress, which obviously has a really low approval rating. He's called Chuck Schumer a mess. He also loves defending Fox News. But one of the guys at Fox News yesterday lambasted him. I think the guy's name was Shepard Smith. I saw a clip on that. And basically just said that he needs to stop lying. So I guess Shepard Smith is off of his invited list. But Fox and Friends, the early morning show, they kiss his ass so much. I guess between them, Hannity, and O'Reilly, those will probably be the only places that you're going to see him on. Now, he came out and stated that the media is going to lambaste him, I guess, today. And I took a look, and yeah, they're obviously, based on this news conference, they did go after him somewhat. So, in that, I guess, based on his actions at this conference, he was just making a prediction that he made sure was going to be true. He claims that there is obvious bias in the media, and I'm going to agree with him on that. There is bias in the media, but all media is biased. You write a story from your point of view, and your bias is going to show up. But now he's claiming that the people are with him, and he cited a Rasmussen poll that said he had a 55% approval rating. Well, that Rasmussen poll is an outlier because the majority of the polls have him in the 40s. So he cherry-picked the polls, picked out the one that was most favorable to him, and is going to harp on that. Now, here's an absolute lie that he told. He said that Hillary Clinton gave 20% of our uranium reserves to Russia. That is a flat-out lie. Apparently, he doesn't know the laws in this country regarding the sale of uranium. It is absolutely illegal to sell uranium to anyone outside of this country. That's the law, okay? So if the Russians got 20% of this particular company's uranium reserves, if they actually received it, I want to know how they got it. And that needs to be investigated. But let me save you some time. They didn't. There were Russians that bought a 20% interest in the company. That's where the 20% comes from. Now, again, he was constantly going back and forth and stating that anything to do with Russia is a non-story. It's a ruse. It's fake news. Well, even a lot of the Republicans are not buying that one, and there are various congressional investigations that are being started up regarding Russia's involvement, and in particular that now they're looking at Flynn, who, by the way, has got a big problem. It might not be that big because Jeff Sessions is the AG, but Mike Flynn lied to the FBI, which is a felony. Now it's going to be up to Jeff Sessions if he wants to prosecute him for that, but it just depends, I guess, on what Donald thinks, because Donald's going to tell Jeff how he wants, or what he wants done as far as Flynn is concerned, and Donald has a lot of love for Flynn. Now, again, Donald was asked about his administration, the travel ban, and Mr. Trump obviously stated that the rollout was smooth. And the only problem with the ban was that he got a bad court decision, and then he's coming up with a new executive order next week. He then went on to blame Delta for the problems at the airport. But if you kept up with it, you know that the protests were Friday night and Saturday, and the judge issued the stay on the ban on Saturday, and the protesters weren't there Sunday, but Delta, who he blamed for large crowds at the airport, again, that occurred on Sunday because of their computer system. those were not protesters that were out there. Those were travelers that were being screwed by Delta. So Mr. Trump's claim of that rollout being perfect obviously were just straight out false. Now, General Secretary Kelly took one for the team. And to be honest with you, there are very few people that are honest in the Trump administration. I will say that the three military people are pretty honest. That's Kelly, Pompeo, and Mathis. And Mathis came out and testified in front of Congress that the poor rollout was his fault. Now, that man was in the air, and early on he had said that he didn't know exactly what was going on with that particular order. But then he gets up in front of Congress and takes one for the team, claiming that he knew all about it and that the poor rollout was his fault. But my question is, if he was directly involved in it, and within 24 hours, he came up with the change in people with in possession of legal visas that were permanent residents, and people with green cards should not have been detained. He came up with that in 24 hours after the rollout. If he was so involved in it, don't you think that he would have come up with those couple of tidbits and placed them within the executive order itself, so that the rollout would have been at least smoother in that regard? So again, I'm thinking that he took one for the team on that one. Now, there was a Jewish gentleman that got up and started asking questions regarding the increase in hate crimes against Jewish organizations, synagogues, businesses, etc. And not only did Donald Trump dismiss him rudely, he didn't even answer the question, which was, what are you gonna do about it? He turned that into a questioning of him being anti-Semitic and anti-black or a racist. So he turned a question about something that had nothing to do with him, other than what actions was he going to take to stop the anti-Semitism that has been springing up all around the country. He turned that question into a referendum on himself and whether he's anti-Semitic and a racist. Again, everything happens to be about Donald Trump. I mean, I could go on, but the one that really bugged me the most was when April Ryan asked him a question regarding the HBCUs, which he stated that he was coming out with an executive order yesterday, and I was looking for it. I still haven't seen it. And also, if he was going to meet with the CBC over his plan to help out inner cities. Well, first he disparaged her before she was even allowed to ask a question. Then when she asked if he was going to meet with the CBC, he didn't even know who the CBC was, the Congressional Black Caucus. She had to tell him who they were. And then he circled the wagons by saying that, yeah, he wants to meet with the Black Caucus. Whoops, wait a minute, the Congressional Black Caucus. And that he had a meeting with, I believe it was, I'm going to say Elijah Cummings, but hang on a second. Yeah, I was right, it was Elijah Cummings, had to look it up real quick. He claims that he had a meeting scheduled with Elijah Cummings, but that Elijah Cummings canceled the meeting. Well, Elijah Cummings came out immediately after and said that was a lie, There was no formal meeting scheduled. That yes, Mr. Cummings did want to sit down and meet with, well, I'm sorry, Elijah Cummings did want to sit down and meet with Donald Trump regarding negotiating drug prices for Medicare, Medicaid, et cetera, but that no formal meeting was made. Nothing on the calendar. And that's an easy one to check, because all you got to do is go to the White House calendar and you can see who's scheduled on it. So he lied about that. It's incredible the amount of lies that this guy tells from point in time to point in time. You know, he talks about Chicago and the two Chicagos. One, everything is great. The other one is worse than the Middle East. And truly, in parts, there's 5 districts in the Chicago area where the majority of the crime and shootings and murders are occurring. That in itself is absolutely true. But his solution, according to him, is education and more law enforcement. No talk about providing economic opportunities to raise the level of life of the residents of the area. And it's a well-known fact that as the economic conditions of people goes up, the crime rates go down. Now, as far as the Congressional Black Caucus is concerned, he had the nerve to tell April Ryan, or ask April Ryan, if she could arrange a meeting between him and the Congressional Black Caucus. And that went on for a couple of minutes. Just so that you know, and it's available online, the Congressional Black Caucus sent a letter out to Donald Trump asking for a meeting and outlining the agenda that they wanted to discuss during the meeting. The head of the Congressional Black Caucus has made a public statement that the Trump administration has never gotten back to them. So it's not necessary for April Ryan to arrange a meeting, okay? All Mr. Trump has to do is to answer the letter that was sent to him, and a meeting obviously can be set up. Folks, you can go out there for yourself and watch that news conference. It was 77 minutes, and arrive at your own decision as to how good or how bad that press conference was. In my opinion, it was absolutely ridiculous. And what makes it even worse is Mr. Trump doesn't believe that his people, his administration, his White House is in chaos. The people, the press, really are taking a much more active role than the Democrats are. And in my opinion, that's to the shame of the Democrats. And I'm not talking about all this slow walking of these nominations. They need to be taking other definitive action, getting involved in local elections that are going to occur within the next 30 days. And they have been woefully silent on their support of Democratic candidates that are running against Republican candidates, especially for the House of Representatives. The Republicans, to their shame, are absolutely muted. You hear crickets anytime they are asked to discuss the things that Mr. Trump is saying. And for the life of me, I don't know why. I mean, I'm not in the Republican camp, but in the past, at least there were reputable Republicans that stood up for the things that are right. Now, you guys like John McCain, Lindsey Graham, Ben Sash, that are speaking out. But people like Chuck Schumer, I'm sorry, I said Chuck Schumer, he's a Democrat. People like Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan, crickets. absolute crickets. You hear nothing from these guys. It's come down to the point, in my opinion, that right for America. Again, just my opinion.